It was 8 p.m. on Christmas Eve. We had just given up and opened a bottle of wine when the phone rang. We almost didn't answer it. Mark looked at me from across the living room, the wine glass halfway to his lips, and I saw 3 years of exhaustion in his eyes. We'd stopped answering unknown numbers 6 months ago. Too many telemarketers, too many reminders about appointments we'd canceled. Too many conversations that led nowhere but pain. But something made me reach for my phone that night. Maybe it was instinct. Maybe it was desperation. Maybe it was just the date. Christmas Eve, the night when miracles are supposed to happen, even though we'd stopped believing in miracles a long time ago. My hand was shaking when I pressed the green button. I didn't say hello. I just waited, holding my breath, while Mark set down his glass and stood up, watching my face with an intensity that made my heart race. "Sarah?" The voice on the other end was breathless, urgent, and I recognized it immediately. Jennifer from Hope Springs Adoption Agency, the agency we'd been working with for 3 years, the agency that had called us 5 times before, with good news that turned into heartbreak. "Sarah, are you sitting down?" I wasn't sitting down. I was standing in the middle of our living room, surrounded by Christmas decorations I'd put up more out of obligation than joy. And suddenly the room started spinning. Mark was beside me in an instant, his hand on my elbow, steadying me, his face pale. I realized I hadn't answered Jennifer. I couldn't speak. After 3 years of infertility treatments, after 5 failed adoptions, after so many doors slamming shut just as we dared to hope, I was terrified of what she might say next. "Sarah, are you there?" Jennifer's voice pulled me back. "I have news. A birth mother gave birth 2 hours ago to a healthy baby boy. She looked through our family profiles tonight, and she chose you. She chose you and Mark. He's here. He's healthy, and she wants you to come to the hospital right now, tonight. Can you come tonight?" The words bounced around in my head like objects I couldn't catch. Baby boy, chose you, tonight. I must have made some sound. Because Mark grabbed both my shoulders, his eyes searching my face, his mouth forming the word "what," but no sound coming out. Jennifer was still talking. Something about St. Mary's Hospital, about bringing documents, about how the birth mother specifically requested to meet us. I was nodding, even though she couldn't see me. Tears streaming down my face in a way I couldn't control. "We'll be there," I finally choked out. "We're leaving right now." When I hung up, Mark was staring at me with an expression I'd never seen before. Something between terror and hope and something too big to name. "Sarah?" His voice cracked. "What happened? Tell me what happened." "We have a son." The words felt foreign in my mouth, like a language I'd studied but never spoken aloud. "There's a baby boy at St. Mary's Hospital, and his birth mother chose us. We need to go right now. We need to go get our son." Mark didn't move. For 3 full seconds, he just stood there, and I watched the information travel through him like an electric current. Then he was grabbing his keys, his wallet, patting his pockets like he couldn't remember how his own body worked. I was doing the same thing, moving through our house in a daze, picking up my purse and putting it down, starting toward the bedroom and stopping. A baby. Our baby. After all this time, after all the grief, after we'd finally let ourselves stop hoping. "The car seat," Mark said suddenly, and we both froze. We'd bought an infant car seat 2 years ago, after our second failed adoption, and stored it in the garage. We'd never taken it out of the box. We'd never assembled it. Because doing so felt like tempting fate, like jinxing ourselves, like setting ourselves up for another devastating loss. Now Mark was running for the garage, and I was right behind him, both of us tripping over our own feet. The box was exactly where we'd left it, covered in dust, and Mark ripped it open with his bare hands. "How does this work?" he muttered, holding up the car seat base and turning it over. "Why are there so many straps?" I grabbed my phone and pulled up a YouTube video, my hands shaking so badly I could barely hold it steady. The video was 17 minutes long. We didn't have 17 minutes. Jennifer had said to come right away, to come now, and every second we spent fumbling with this car seat was a second we weren't with our son. Our son. I kept trying to wrap my mind around those words, but they slid away from me like water. Mark was wrestling with the seatbelt, threading it through loops that didn't seem designed for human hands, swearing under his breath. I abandoned the video and started helping him, both of us pulling on straps and pushing on plastic, neither of us entirely sure if we were doing it right. Finally, after what felt like hours but was probably only 5 minutes, the base clicked into place. Mark tugged on it hard, testing its stability. It held firm. He looked up at me, his face flushed, his hair standing up at odd angles. "Okay," he said. "Okay, we can do this. We're ready." But we weren't ready. How could anyone be ready for a moment like this? We'd been preparing for years, reading every book, taking every class, filling out endless paperwork. But now that it was actually happening, I felt like I knew nothing at all. I ran back inside to grab my purse again, and as I passed the mirror in the hallway, I caught sight of myself. My face was blotchy from crying, mascara smeared under my eyes, my hair pulled back in the messy ponytail I'd worn all day. I looked like someone who'd given up on Christmas, not someone about to meet her son for the first time. I almost stopped to fix it. Then I realized how absurd that was. There was a baby waiting for us. Our baby. Nothing else mattered. I grabbed my coat and ran back to where Mark was waiting by the car, engine already running, his foot tapping nervously against the floorboard. The clock on the dashboard read 8:23. 23 minutes since the phone call that changed everything. The roads were nearly empty as we drove through our neighborhood. Everyone was already where they were supposed to be on Christmas Eve, gathered around dinner tables, watching children open presents, singing carols by the fire. We passed house after house lit up with colored lights, and I felt the surreal disconnect of our moment. While the world celebrated in their warm homes, we were racing through the cold night towards something we dreamed about for so long that it had started to feel like just a dream. Mark was gripping the steering wheel so tightly his knuckles had gone white. He kept glancing over at me, then back at the road, like he needed to confirm I was really there, that this was really happening. Neither of us spoke. What was there to say? Every emotion I'd ever experienced seemed to be flooding through me simultaneously. Joy and terror and disbelief and a desperate, aching hope that made my chest physically hurt. "What if she changes her mind?" Mark said suddenly, his voice barely above a whisper. It was the question we were both thinking, the fear that had been chasing us through every failed adoption. 5 times we'd been chosen by birth mothers. 5 times we'd allowed ourselves to hope, to plan, to imagine the child who would make our family complete. And 5 times, for various reasons, those adoptions had fallen through. The first birth mother had chosen another family at the last minute. The second had miscarried. The third had decided to parent. The fourth had relapsed and was deemed unfit, and the baby went into foster care instead. The fifth had simply disappeared, stopped answering calls, and we never found out what happened. Each loss had carved out a piece of us, until we were hollowed out and fragile, held together by little more than stubbornness and the increasingly faint hope that maybe, somehow, it would work out. "I don't know," I finally said, because honesty was all I had left to give him, but we have to try. Even if it breaks us again, we have to try. The hospital loomed ahead of us, its windows glowing yellow against the dark sky. St. Mary's Medical Center, the sign read, with a smaller sign below directing visitors to the maternity ward. Mark pulled into the parking lot, and for a moment we just sat there, the engine ticking as it cooled, both of us staring up at that building like it held all the answers to questions we'd been asking for years. I could see my breath fogging in the cold air. Christmas music was playing faintly from somewhere. "Ready?" Mark asked, and I almost laughed because the question was so absurd. Of course I wasn't ready. I would never be ready. But I nodded anyway, and we got out of the car. The hospital lobby was decorated for Christmas. A huge tree in the corner, garland wrapped around the reception desk, red bows on every available surface. The woman at the desk looked up as we approached, and she must have seen something in our faces because her professional smile faltered. We probably looked exactly like what we were, two people on the edge of either the best or worst moment of their lives, unable to tell which. "We're here for the maternity ward," I said, surprised at how steady my voice sounded. "Hope Springs Adoption Agency called us. There's a birth mother who wants to meet us." The receptionist's expression softened. She picked up the phone, murmured something I couldn't quite hear. Then she was giving us visitor badges and directions to the 4th floor. We were walking toward the elevators like two people in a dream. I kept expecting to wake up. I kept waiting for someone to tell us there had been a mistake, that we'd misunderstood, that our real Christmas Eve was still waiting for us back in our living room with the open bottle of wine. The elevator seemed to take forever. Mark reached over and grabbed my hand, lacing his fingers through mine. I squeezed back so hard it must have hurt, but he didn't pull away. We stood there, holding on to each other, as the elevator climbed floor by floor, carrying us toward a future we'd almost given up believing in. When the doors opened on the 4th floor, Jennifer was waiting for us. I recognized her immediately from our agency meetings, though I'd never seen her like this. Hair slightly disheveled, makeup faded, wearing jeans instead of her usual professional attire. She must have rushed here just like we had. She smiled when she saw us, but there was something careful in her expression, something that made my heart seize with sudden fear. "Sarah, Mark," she said, pulling us both into a quick hug. "Thank you for coming so quickly. I know this is overwhelming. Let me explain what's happening." She led us to a small waiting room away from the main nurse's station. The walls were painted a soothing blue. There were magazines scattered on the table that no one had bothered to organize. We sat on the edge of the couch, both of us perched like birds, ready to take flight. Jennifer sat across from us, leaning forward with her hands clasped between her knees. "The birth mother's name is Amanda," she began. Even that, having a name for her, it made everything feel more real. "She's 19 years old. This is her first pregnancy. She went into labor unexpectedly this afternoon, and the baby was born at 6:45. A healthy boy, 7 pounds 4 ounces, no complications." Jennifer paused, choosing her words carefully. She hadn't made a decision about adoption until tonight. She'd been planning to parent, but after the birth, she realized she couldn't give him the life she wanted for him. She asked for our family profiles, and she went through every single one. Then she stopped at yours and said, "These are his parents. I can feel it." And I couldn't breathe. The air in the room felt too thick, too heavy. Mark's hand in mine was the only thing keeping me anchored to the earth. Amanda, 19 years old, barely more than a child herself, making the most difficult decision of her life on what was supposed to be a holy, magical night. I thought about her in a hospital room somewhere on this floor, alone, having just given birth, looking at pictures of strangers and trying to choose which ones would raise her son. "She wants to meet you," Jennifer continued. "Right now, tonight, before she signs any papers. She wants to look you in the eye and know she's making the right choice. Are you okay with that?" "Yes," I said immediately. At the same time, Mark said, "Of course." What else could we say? If Amanda needed to meet us to feel confident in her decision, we would do whatever she asked. We would walk across fire. We would move mountains. We would do anything at all for the chance to be this baby's parents. Jennifer nodded, relief visible in her face. "Okay, good. I need you to know that this is still very fresh for her. She's in a lot of pain, both physical and emotional. She might cry. She might change her mind." Jennifer looked at us both directly. "You need to be prepared for that possibility. I know you've been through this before, and I know how hard that was. But I need you to go into that room with an open heart and no expectations. Can you do that?" I thought about the 5 times before, the 5 times we'd let ourselves hope only to have it ripped away. I thought about the car seat we'd just installed, the nursery at home that we'd painted 2 years ago and then closed the door on because we couldn't bear to look at it. I thought about all the baby clothes in storage, the stuffed animals we'd collected, the books we'd bought for bedtime stories we'd never gotten to read, and I thought about Amanda, 19 and scared, and trying to do what she believed was right for her son. "We can do that," I said, and meant it. "We understand." Jennifer stood up, and we stood with her. My legs felt shaky, uncertain, like I'd forgotten how to walk properly. We followed her down a long hallway, past rooms where new mothers were sleeping or feeding their babies, past a nurse's station where someone was humming along to a Christmas carol playing softly from a radio. Everything felt hyper-real and dreamlike at the same time. The fluorescent lights, too bright. The smell of antiseptic, too sharp. The sound of our footsteps on the linoleum, too loud. Jennifer stopped outside a closed door. Room 427. She turned to face us one more time. "Remember," she said quietly. "Open heart. No expectations. Just be yourselves." That's what she needs to see. Then she knocked gently and pushed the door open. The room was dim, lit only by a small lamp in the corner. Amanda was in the bed, propped up on pillows, and she looked so young, so impossibly young. My heart immediately went out to her. She had long, dark hair pulled back in a braid. Her face was puffy from crying. But what struck me most were her eyes. Old eyes, tired eyes, eyes that had seen more than any 19-year-old should have to see. She was holding a bundle of blue blankets. I realized with a jolt that sent electricity through my entire body that our son was in those blankets. Right there, just a few feet away. The baby we'd been waiting for was real and breathing and alive. "Amanda," Jennifer said softly, "these are the people I told you about. This is Sarah and Mark." Amanda looked at us. I watched her eyes travel over our faces, taking us in, measuring us against whatever standard she'd set in her mind. I wanted to speak, to say something profound and meaningful, but my throat had closed up completely. Mark seemed to be having the same problem. We stood there like 2 awkward teenagers at their first dance, not knowing what to do with our hands or where to look. "Hi," Amanda finally said, her voice hoarse. "Thank you for coming so fast. I know it's Christmas Eve. I know this is probably the worst timing ever." "No," I managed to say, finding my voice. "No, there's no such thing as bad timing for this. We're grateful. We're so grateful you chose us." Something in Amanda's face softened slightly. "Sit down," she said, gesturing to the chairs near her bed. "Please, I want to talk to you. I want to know who you are." We sat. Mark pulled his chair slightly closer to mine, our knees touching, a united front. Amanda adjusted the bundle in her arms, and I caught a glimpse of a tiny face. Eyes closed, impossibly small features. My son. That was my son. The thought was so overwhelming I had to look away. Focus on Amanda instead. Because this wasn't about us yet. This was about her and what she needed. "Tell me about your life," Amanda said, looking directly at me. "Jennifer showed me your profile book, but I want to hear it from you. Tell me what kind of life my son would have with you." So I told her. I told her about our house with the big backyard, about the neighborhood full of kids who played in the street until the streetlights came on. I told her about Mark's job as an engineer, about how he builds things and fixes things and never gives up on a problem until he solves it. I told her about my work as a teacher, about how much I loved children, about the classroom I'd built and the students I'd taught, and how desperately I wanted to bring those same lessons home. I told her about our families, about the grandparents who were waiting to spoil this child, about the cousins who would become his best friends, about the community that would embrace him and celebrate him and help him become whoever he was meant to be. And then Mark started talking. and I heard things I'd never heard him say before. He talked about his own childhood, about being raised by a single mother who worked 3 jobs and still made it to every school play and soccer game. He talked about the kind of father he wanted to be, present and engaged and patient. He talked about the treehouse he wanted to build, the fishing trips he wanted to take, the quiet moments reading stories before bed. His voice cracked as he spoke. I saw tears on his face. I realized we were both crying, all 3 of us in this dim hospital room on Christmas Eve, connected by the tiny baby in Amanda's arms. When we finished talking, Amanda was quiet for a long time. She looked down at the baby, her face unreadable. I felt Mark tense beside me. This was it. This was the moment where she would decide, where our future would be determined by this young woman's choice. I wanted to pray, but I'd forgotten how. I wanted to promise her things, guarantee her outcomes, make her believe with absolute certainty that we would love her son enough for everyone. But all I could do was wait. I'm scared, Amanda finally whispered, so quietly I almost didn't hear her. I'm so scared I'm making the wrong choice. What if I regret this? What if he grows up hating me? What if I'm being selfish? I didn't think. I just moved. I got up from my chair and sat on the edge of Amanda's bed. I took her hand, the one that wasn't holding the baby, and I held it between both of mine. You're not being selfish, I said, and I meant it with every fiber of my being. You're being brave. You're putting your son's needs before your own, and that's the most selfless thing a mother can do. And if you do choose us, we promise you, we promise, we will make sure he knows how much you loved him. We will tell him about this night, about how you made the hardest decision in the world because you wanted him to have the best possible life. We will make sure he understands that you didn't give him away. You chose a family for him. There's a difference. Amanda looked at me, tears streaming down her face. She squeezed my hand so tightly it hurt. Will you let me see pictures? Will you tell me how he's doing? I don't want to disappear from his life completely. I just can't be his mom right now. I'm not ready. I don't have anything to give him. Yes, Mark said, coming to stand behind me, putting his hand on my shoulder. Yes, we'll send you pictures. We'll send you updates. We'll tell you about his first words and his first steps and every milestone in between. You'll be part of his story, Amanda, always. Something shifted in the room then. The fear didn't disappear exactly, but it became something we could all hold together. Amanda looked down at the baby one more time, her face full of love and grief and determination. Then slowly, she lifted him toward me. His name is Noah, she said. I named him Noah because it means peace, and that's what I want for him. Peace and happiness, and all the things I can't give him right now. Will you keep his name? You don't have to, but I'd like you to. My hands were shaking as I reached out. I'd held babies before. I was a teacher. I'd held dozens of babies. But this was different. This was my son. This was Noah. He was so light, so impossibly light. When I pulled him close to my chest, he made a small sound and turned his face toward me, rooting instinctively. He smelled like hospitals and baby lotion, and something else, something indefinable that I would later recognize as just his smell. The smell that belonged only to him. Noah, I whispered, testing out the name. Hi, Noah. Hi, baby. I'm your mama. We've been waiting for you for so long. Mark was leaning over my shoulder, staring down at Noah with an expression of absolute wonder. He reached out one finger and gently touched Noah's tiny hand. Noah's fingers immediately curled around it, gripping tight with that newborn reflex. Mark made a sound somewhere between a laugh and a sob. Look at him, Mark breathed. Sarah, look at his face. He's perfect. He's absolutely perfect. I couldn't look away. Noah had dark hair like Amanda. Even though his eyes were closed, I could see the shape of his face. The tiny button nose, the rosebud mouth. He was wearing a blue hospital shirt that was too big for him. His hands were curled into loose fists. Everything about him was miniature and miraculous. This was real. After 3 years of waiting, of hoping, of grieving, I was finally holding my son. When I looked up, Amanda had turned away, staring out the dark window at the parking lot below. Her shoulders were shaking. She was crying, trying to hide it from us. Jennifer had moved to her side, speaking quietly, offering comfort in words I couldn't hear. I wanted to go to her, to thank her, to somehow convey the enormity of what she'd just given us. But I also understood that she needed space. She needed to grieve in her own way. Jennifer caught my eye and gestured toward the door. It was time for us to go. Time to leave Amanda to process what had just happened, to give her privacy in this moment of profound loss. I stood carefully, cradling Noah close. Mark immediately put his arm around both of us, creating a protective circle. We moved toward the door, and just as we reached it, Amanda spoke. "Wait," she said, not turning around. "Promise me one more thing. Promise me you'll tell him I loved him. Not past tense, present tense. Tell him I love him." But I couldn't focus on anything except the weight of the baby in my arms. Mark was crying openly now, not even trying to hide it. His hand constantly reaching out to touch Noah's head, his blanket, his tiny feet. Like he needed physical confirmation that this was real. "You can't leave the hospital with him yet," Jennifer was saying. "There's a 48-hour waiting period before Amanda can sign the final relinquishment papers. Until then, technically, you're foster parents. But she was very clear that she wants you to take him home tonight. She doesn't want him in the nursery. She wants him with you. So we're going to discharge you both together, as a family. The nurses are preparing the paperwork now. Foster parents." The words should have scared me, should have reminded me that nothing was certain yet, that Amanda could still change her mind. But standing there in that hospital hallway, holding Noah while Christmas carols played softly from a radio somewhere nearby, I couldn't feel afraid. I could only feel grateful. Even if this was all we got, even if tomorrow Amanda woke up and decided she wanted him back, we would have had this perfect, miraculous moment of becoming parents. The next hour passed in a blur. Nurses came and went, bringing us diapers and formula, and demonstrating how to swaddle. They showed us how to support Noah's head, how to check his temperature, how to tell if he was hungry or tired or needed a diaper change. Mark pulled out his phone and started taking notes, his face serious and focused, like this was the most important test he'd ever studied for. I just held Noah, unable to put him down, unable to stop staring at his face. A nurse whose name tag read Patty came in with a wheelchair and a stack of papers. "Hospital policy," she said with a kind smile. "New moms have to be wheeled out, even new moms who didn't actually give birth. House rules." So I sat in the wheelchair with Noah in my arms. Mark pushed us toward the elevator, carrying the diaper bag the hospital had given us. He looked dazed and happy and terrified all at once. Patty walked beside us, chatting about her own grandchildren, about how Christmas babies were special, about how this was the best part of her job. The elevator doors opened. We descended, leaving the 4th floor and Amanda's room behind. The lobby was quieter now, past visiting hours, with just a skeleton crew of staff manning the desk. They smiled at us as we passed. One of them called out, "Merry Christmas." It was 12:17 a.m., Christmas Day. We were bringing our son home on Christmas morning. The automatic doors opened. The cold December air hit us like a physical force. Mark had parked near the entrance, and he ran ahead to get the car, leaving Patty and me standing under the covered walkway. Noah stirred in my arms, making small mewling sounds. I looked down to find his eyes open for the first time. They were dark blue. All newborns had dark blue eyes, I knew that. But they seemed to look right at me, right into me. I felt something lock into place in my chest. "Baby," I whispered, "welcome to the world, welcome to your family." Mark pulled up in our car. Suddenly, we were faced with the reality of the car seat. The car seat we'd installed in a panic just hours ago. The car seat neither of us was entirely sure we'd installed correctly. Patty helped us settle Noah into it, showing us how to thread the straps through his legs, how to adjust them so they were snug but not too tight, how to position his head so it wouldn't flop forward. Noah immediately started crying, his face scrunching up in displeasure at being confined. I felt panic rise in my throat. "He's upset," I said, stating the obvious. "What do we do? How do we make him stop crying?" Patty laughed, but it was kind, not mocking. "Honey, babies cry. It's how they communicate. He's probably just cold and confused. He'll settle down once you start driving. The movement helps. And if he doesn't, well, welcome to parenthood. You're going to hear a lot of crying in the next few months." She waved us off. Then we were alone in the car with our son, who was indeed still crying, his tiny face red with the effort. Mark looked at me. I looked at him. For a moment we just sat there, listening to Noah wail, both of us frozen by the sudden reality of our complete inexperience. Then Mark started the engine. As Patty had predicted, the movement of the car seemed to calm Noah. His cries faded to whimpers, then to silence. By the time we pulled out of the parking lot, he was asleep again. We drove home through empty streets, past houses dark and silent, past the occasional lit window where someone was probably waiting for Santa or assembling last-minute presents. The clock on the dashboard read 12:32 a.m. 32 minutes into Christmas Day, 32 minutes into being parents. Mark was driving 5 miles under the speed limit, both hands gripping the wheel, his eyes constantly flicking to the rearview mirror to check on Noah. I had twisted around in my seat, watching Noah sleep, unable to look away for even a second. "We have a son," Mark said suddenly, his voice full of wonder. "Sarah, we have a son." "I know," I said, and started crying again. Because what else could I do? The emotion was too big to hold inside. Joy and disbelief and gratitude and fear all swirled together until I couldn't tell where one feeling ended and another began. "I can't believe this is happening. I keep thinking I'm going to wake up. If you're dreaming, I'm dreaming the same dream," Mark said. Then softer, almost to himself, "Thank you, Amanda. Thank you for trusting us. Thank you for this gift." When we pulled into our driveway, the house looked different somehow. The same house we'd left just a few hours ago, but transformed by what we were bringing home. The Christmas lights we'd strung up half-heartedly were still glowing. I thought about how this morning we'd been two people going through the motions of a holiday we didn't really feel like celebrating. Now everything had changed. Now we were a family. Getting Noah out of the car seat proved to be harder than getting him in. The straps had somehow tightened themselves. Or maybe we were just fumbling because our hands were shaking. It took us several tries to figure out how to release the buckle. Noah woke up during the process and started crying again, his face scrunching up in that newborn way that made him look ancient and brand new all at once. I finally got him free and pulled him against my chest. He immediately quieted, seeking warmth and comfort. Our house was still exactly as we'd left it. The Christmas tree lights still on. The bottle of wine still sitting on the coffee table. Mark's phone on the couch where he'd dropped it when I'd gotten the call. It felt like we'd been gone for days, not hours. Everything looked the same. But we weren't the same people who'd left here. We'd walked out as a couple. We'd come back as parents. "He probably needs to eat," I said, looking down at Noah. "What time did Jennifer say he last ate?" Mark was already pulling out the papers the hospital had given us, scanning through them with focused intensity. 8 p.m. They fed him right after birth, so he's probably due for another bottle soon. They gave us formula and bottles. They're in the diaper bag. We moved into the kitchen. Mark started preparing a bottle while I held Noah, swaying slightly, trying to remember everything the nurses had told us. Room temperature water, 2 ounces of formula. Shake gently to mix. Don't microwave. Test the temperature on your wrist. It all seemed impossibly complicated, like we were preparing rocket fuel instead of baby food. But then Noah was eating, his tiny mouth working at the bottle, his eyes closed in concentration. It felt like the most natural thing in the world. I sat on the couch, in our living room, in our house, and fed our son his first bottle at home. Mark sat beside me, his arm around my shoulders. We watched Noah together in awed silence. "I can't believe he's ours," Mark whispered. "I keep thinking someone's going to knock on the door and tell us to give him back." "Don't say that," I said, but I understood what he meant. The fear was still there, lurking beneath the joy. Amanda had 48 hours to change her mind. 2 days. Anything could happen in 2 days. But I pushed the fear down, tried to focus on this moment, on the weight of Noah in my arms, and the warmth of Mark beside me, and the incredible fact that we were finally parents. Noah fell asleep halfway through the bottle, milk dribbling from the corner of his mouth. The nurses had warned us about this. Newborns often fell asleep while eating, and we were supposed to wake them up, keep them engaged. But I couldn't bring myself to disturb him. He looked so peaceful, so content, his tiny chest rising and falling with each breath. Mark gently took the bottle from my hand and set it aside. "We should probably take him upstairs," he said. "Show him his room." The nursery. We hadn't been inside it in months. After the last failed adoption, I'd closed the door and refused to open it. Unable to face the empty crib and the unused changing table and all the hopes we'd poured into that space. Now Mark stood up and offered me his hand. Together, we walked upstairs, Noah sleeping peacefully in my arms, unaware of the significance of what was happening. Mark pushed open the nursery door. I braced myself for the wave of grief I'd felt every other time I'd looked inside. But it didn't come. Instead, I saw the room the way it was supposed to be seen. Not as a shrine to our failures, but as a beginning. The walls were painted a soft gray blue. The crib was white with clean lines. The rocking chair in the corner was the one I'd picked out 3 years ago, imagining late-night feedings and bedtime stories. And now those imaginings were becoming real. "It's perfect," I whispered. "It's perfect for him." Mark had moved to the crib, checking the sheets, adjusting the mobile that hung above it. We'd had everything safety checked a year ago, making sure every item met current standards, but now he was double-checking everything. His engineer's mind unable to rest until he was satisfied that our son would be safe. I walked to the rocking chair and sat down carefully, still cradling Noah. The chair creaked slightly as I rocked back and forth. Noah stirred, but didn't wake. Mark came and knelt beside us, his hand resting on the arm of the chair. For a long moment, we just stayed like that. The 3 of us in the nursery we built with so much hope and pain. Finally together, finally a family. "What do we do now?" Mark asked. "Do we just put him in the crib? Do we stay with him? What if he stops breathing?" I realized we were both terrified. All the books we'd read, all the classes we'd taken, and now that we actually had a baby in our arms, we felt completely unprepared. I thought about calling my sister, who had 3 kids, but it was almost 1 a.m. on Christmas Day. Everyone we knew was asleep. "The nurses said to put him on his back," I said, remembering fragments of the instructions we'd been given. Nothing in the crib with him. No blankets, no pillows, nothing. Just him and the fitted sheet. Mark nodded, processing this information. Okay, we can do that. Should we change his diaper first?" We looked at each other. Neither of us had ever changed a diaper before. The nurses had shown us in the hospital, walking us through it step by step, but that had been with their guidance. Now we were on our own. "Yes," I said, trying to sound more confident than I felt. "We should change his diaper first." The changing table was already set up with everything we needed. Diapers, wipes, diaper cream, all the supplies we'd bought 2 years ago and never used. Mark spread out the changing pad, while I stood there holding Noah, suddenly afraid to put him down. What if I dropped him? What if I hurt him somehow? My hands felt clumsy and too big. "You can do this," Mark said gently, reading my mind. "He's our son. You're his mother. You can do this." I laid Noah down on the changing table, one hand on his chest to keep him steady. He woke up immediately and started crying, his face turning red, his tiny fists waving in the air. The sound was so loud in the quiet nursery, so urgent and distressed. Every instinct in my body screamed at me to pick him back up, to comfort him, to make the crying stop. "It's okay, baby," I murmured, fumbling with the snaps on his hospital shirt. "It's okay. Mama's right here. We're just going to get you changed and then you can go back to sleep." But my hands were shaking so badly I couldn't get the snaps undone. There were so many of them. Why were there so many snaps? Mark stepped in, his fingers more steady than mine, and together we managed to get Noah's diaper off. It was wet but not dirty. A small mercy. I wasn't sure I was ready for dirty yet. Getting the new diaper on was harder than it looked. The tabs didn't seem to stick where I wanted them to. The diaper kept sliding to one side. Noah was still crying, his whole body rigid with displeasure. I could feel tears pricking at my own eyes. We'd been parents for less than 2 hours, and I already felt like I was failing. "Here," Mark said, adjusting the diaper with gentle hands. "Like this. See? It's okay. He's okay. We're okay." Finally, we got him changed and dressed again. I picked him up immediately, pulling him close, and he quieted almost at once. Just needed to be held, just needed to feel safe. I understood that feeling. I'd been feeling it myself for the past 3 years. "I don't think I can put him down," I whispered to Mark. "I know we're supposed to. I know we need to sleep. But I don't think I can let go of him yet." Mark wrapped his arms around both of us. "Then don't," he said. "We'll stay here with him. We'll take turns holding him. We'll figure it out as we go." So that's what we did. We pulled the rocking chair closer to the crib, and I sat down with Noah, while Mark dragged in pillows and blankets from our bedroom. He made a makeshift bed on the floor of the nursery, right next to where I was sitting. Neither of us was willing to leave. Neither of us wanted to be more than a few feet away from our son. The house was quiet, except for the sound of Noah's breathing and the occasional creak of the rocking chair. Through the nursery window, I could see our neighbors' Christmas lights still twinkling in the darkness. I thought about all the Christmases I'd imagined, all the years I'd pictured myself waking up on Christmas morning to the sound of children's laughter, to tiny feet running down the hallway, to the chaos and joy of a house full of life. This wasn't quite what I'd imagined. It was quieter, more intimate. Just the three of us in this small room, learning each other, becoming a family in a space between one breath and the next. "Do you think Amanda's okay?" I asked Mark softly. He looked up at me from where he was lying on the floor. "I don't know," he said honestly. "I hope so. I hope she has people with her. I hope she's not alone." I thought about her in that hospital room, about the empty space in her arms where Noah had been, about the grief she must be feeling, even if she knew she'd made the right choice. My heart ached for her, for the impossibly difficult decision she'd made, for the sacrifice she'd given us. "We have to make this count," I said. "We have to be the parents she believed we could be. We owe her that." "We will be," Mark promised. "We'll love him enough for all of us, for you and me and Amanda and everyone who's ever hoped for this moment." Noah stirred in my arms, his face scrunching up like he was about to cry again. But then he settled, his tiny hand curling around my finger, and he fell back asleep. I looked down at him. This perfect, beautiful, miraculous baby who had come into our lives when we'd stopped believing in miracles. I thought about the phone call that had started all of this, about how close we'd come to not answering, about how different this night would have been if I'd ignored that unknown number, if I'd stayed on the couch with Mark and the wine and our quiet, childless Christmas Eve. The universe worked in mysterious ways. That's what people always said. I'd never really believed it before. But sitting there in the nursery, holding my son, while my husband dozed on the floor beside us, I thought maybe there was something to it. Maybe There was a reason things happened the way they did. Maybe all the pain and disappointment and loss we'd experienced had been leading us here, to this moment, to Noah. The hours passed slowly. Noah woke up every 2 hours like clockwork, crying to be fed or changed. Each time, Mark and I stumbled through the routine, getting a little better at it, a little more confident. By the third feeding, around 4:30 in the morning, we were actually managing to change his diaper without fumbling. By the fourth feeding, around 6:30, we could prepare a bottle without checking the instructions. Dawn was breaking when I finally allowed myself to put Noah in his crib. The sun was just starting to peek over the horizon, casting a soft pink light through the nursery window. It was Christmas morning, our first Christmas as parents. I laid Noah down gently on his back, watching to make sure he was still breathing, my hand hovering over him protectively. "Merry Christmas, Noah," I whispered. "Merry Christmas, sweet boy." Mark came to stand beside me, his arm around my waist. We looked down at our son together. His dark hair stuck up in funny tufts. His mouth was slightly open. His chest rose and fell with each tiny breath. He was the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. "We should try to sleep," Mark said, but neither of us moved. We couldn't stop looking at him, couldn't stop marveling at the fact that he was really here, really ours. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out to find a message from Jennifer. Just 3 words. "Merry Christmas. Parents." Parents. We were parents. The words still felt surreal. I showed the message to Mark, and he smiled, exhausted and happy and overwhelmed. "We should call our families," he said. "They're probably awake by now. They'll want to know." I'd completely forgotten about our families, about the grandparents and aunts and uncles and cousins who'd been waiting almost as long as we had for this moment. I pulled out my phone again and saw dozens of missed calls and messages. My mom had texted 6 times, increasingly worried that we hadn't responded to her Merry Christmas text. Mark's sister had called twice. "They're going to lose their minds," I said. Mark grinned. "Should we video call them? Let them see Noah?" So we did. We called my parents first, and my mom answered on the first ring, her face worried. "Sarah, honey, are you okay? I've been trying to reach you since last night." "Mom," I said, unable to keep the smile off my face. "Mom, we have a son. We brought him home from the hospital a few hours ago. His name is Noah." There was a moment of complete silence. Then, my mother screamed so loudly that Noah startled in his crib. Mark quickly turned the camera to show Noah, and my mom burst into tears, clutching my dad's arm, both of them staring at the screen with expressions of pure joy. "Oh my God," my mom kept saying. "Oh my God, Sarah, he's beautiful. He's perfect. When can we meet him? Can we come over? Are you okay? Do you need anything?" We spent the next 20 minutes on the phone with my parents, answering their million questions, showing them different angles of Noah, promising that, yes, they could come visit later that day. Then we called Mark's mom and his sister and my brother, and each conversation was the same. Shock and joy and tears and questions, and an overwhelming outpouring of love. By the time we'd finished calling everyone, it was almost 8 in the morning. Noah was still asleep. Mark and I looked at each other, both of us running on pure adrenaline and no sleep. "Coffee?" Mark suggested. "Coffee," I agreed. We tiptoed out of the nursery, leaving the door open so we could hear if Noah woke up. Downstairs, the living room looked exactly as we'd left it the night before. The Christmas tree, the unopened wine bottle, the presents we'd wrapped for each other that now seemed completely insignificant. Mark started the coffee maker while I collapsed on the couch. Every muscle in my body ached. My eyes felt gritty from lack of sleep. But I'd never been happier in my entire life. Mark brought me a mug of coffee, and I wrapped my hands around it, savoring the warmth. "This is the weirdest Christmas I've ever had," Mark said, sitting down beside me. I laughed. Weird doesn't even begin to cover it. 24 hours ago, we were giving up. We were done hoping. And now there's a baby sleeping upstairs. Our baby. Our son, Mark corrected, like he was testing out the words. Noah. Our son Noah. We sat there in silence for a moment, drinking our coffee, trying to process everything that had happened. My mind kept circling back to Amanda, to the choice she'd made, to the sacrifice she'd given us. We need to text Jennifer, I said suddenly. Ask her about Amanda. Make sure she's okay. Make sure she has support. Mark nodded and pulled out his phone. He typed out a message and hit send. A few minutes later, Jennifer responded. Amanda was doing as well as could be expected. She had her mother with her at the hospital. She'd asked about Noah, wanted to know that he was safe and loved. Jennifer had sent her a photo we'd taken at the hospital, and Amanda had cried, but said she was glad, said she'd made the right choice. I felt tears sliding down my cheeks again. I seemed to be crying constantly now. Happy tears and sad tears and grateful tears all mixed together until I couldn't tell them apart. We need to write her a letter, I said. Today, before the 48 hours are up. We need to tell her thank you. We need to tell her that we'll keep our promises. So that's what we did. While Noah slept upstairs, Mark and I sat at the kitchen table with pen and paper and we wrote to Amanda. We told her about bringing Noah home on Christmas morning, about how he'd held Mark's finger and wouldn't let go, about how he had her eyes and her hair, about the nursery we'd prepared and the family who was waiting to meet him, about the life we would give him, the love we would surround him with, the way we would make sure he always knew her story. We told her that we would send pictures every month, that we would keep her updated on every milestone, that when Noah was old enough to understand, we would tell him about his brave birth mother who loved him enough to choose a better life for him. We promised that he would grow up knowing he was loved by so many people, that his adoption wasn't a loss, but an expansion, more people to love him, more hearts invested in his happiness. ... When we finished the letter, we both read it over, making small changes, trying to find the right words to convey the enormity of what we felt. There were no right words, really. How do you thank someone for giving you your greatest dream? How do you express gratitude for a gift so profound it changes the entire trajectory of your life? We sealed the letter in an envelope and set it aside to give to Jennifer later. Then we went back upstairs to check on Noah. He was still sleeping, his tiny chest rising and falling, his face peaceful. I stood by the crib and just watched him breathe, something I would do thousands of times over the next few months. Something I would probably never stop doing, even when he was older. Even when he didn't need me standing guard over his sleep. You know what I just realized? Mark said from behind me. We don't have any Christmas presents for him. We didn't even think about it. I looked around the nursery, at the shelves full of books, at the stuffed animals we'd collected over the years, at the dresser full of carefully organized baby clothes in every size from newborn to 12 months. He has everything he needs, I said. He has us. That's enough. But Mark was already on his phone, scrolling through something. My mom wants to come over at noon. She's bringing food. Your parents want to come at 2. My sister wants to come at 4. Everyone wants to meet him. I felt a flutter of panic. That's too many people. He's only a few hours old. What if he gets overwhelmed? What if we get overwhelmed? We can say no, Mark said immediately. We can tell them to wait. It's okay to set boundaries. But as I thought about it, I realized I didn't want to say no. I wanted Noah to meet his family. I wanted him to be surrounded by all the people who had been waiting for him, who had grieved with us through every failed adoption, who had never stopped believing that someday, somehow, we would become parents. Okay, I said, but we'll keep the visits short, and they have to wash their hands before they hold him. And if he gets fussy, everyone leaves. Deal? Deal, Mark agreed. Around 9:30, Noah woke up crying. We changed him and fed him, and this time the routine felt almost natural. We were getting the hang of this. Maybe we weren't completely hopeless after all. After he ate, Noah stayed awake, his dark blue eyes looking around the room with what seemed like curiosity. I carried him downstairs to show him the Christmas tree. "See the lights?" I said softly, pointing to the colorful bulbs. "Aren't they pretty?" "This is your first Christmas, Noah. Your first Christmas with us." The tree that had looked so sad and half-hearted yesterday now seemed magical. The lights twinkled. The ornaments caught the morning sun streaming through the windows. Everything looked different through the lens of joy, through the perspective of finally having everything we dreamed of. Mark joined us, his phone camera ready. "First Christmas photo," he said, and I smiled at the camera with Noah in my arms, both of us in the pajamas we'd been wearing since yesterday, exhausted and overwhelmed and radiantly happy. The doorbell rang at exactly noon. My mom didn't wait for us to answer. She let herself in with her spare key. My dad right behind her, both of them carrying bags of food and presents, and far too much energy for two people who'd probably been awake since 5 a.m. "Where is he?" my mom demanded, looking around frantically. "Where's my grandson?" I handed Noah to her and she burst into tears immediately, cradling him like he was made of glass. "Oh, Sarah," she sobbed. "Oh, honey, he's perfect. He's absolutely perfect." My dad was crying too, which I'd never seen before. He put his arm around my mom and looked down at Noah with such love and tenderness that I felt my own tears starting again. This was what I'd wanted, not just to be a mother, but to give my parents a grandchild, to watch my dad become a grandfather, to see my mom hold a baby she could spoil and love and watch grow up. "What's his name?" my dad asked. "Noah," I said. His birth mother named him Noah. It means peace. "Noah," my mom repeated, trying it out. "Noah, welcome to the family, sweet boy. We've been waiting for you for so long." We spent the next hour in the living room, my parents taking turns holding Noah, asking questions about the adoption, about Amanda, about how we were feeling. My mom had brought enough food to feed an army, casseroles and cookies and a full Christmas dinner that she said we could heat up later because she knew we probably hadn't thought about cooking. She was right. We hadn't thought about cooking. We hadn't thought about much beyond the immediate moment. Beyond making sure Noah was fed and changed and safe, everything else seemed secondary. When my parents finally left, promising to come back tomorrow, I felt a strange mix of relief and loneliness. It had been wonderful to share Noah with them, but it had also been exhausting. Every time someone held him, I found myself hovering, watching, ready to snatch him back if he seemed uncomfortable. I was going to have to work on that. Work on letting go, just a little bit. Work on trusting other people to hold him carefully. Mark's mom arrived at 2 with his sister and her 2 kids. The cousins were 5 and 7, old enough to be excited about the new baby, but young enough to be completely unfiltered in their reactions. "He's so tiny," the 7-year-old exclaimed. "Can he play with us?" "Not yet," Mark's sister said with a laugh. "He has to grow a little bit first. But someday you'll teach him how to play, okay?" "Okay," the kids agreed solemnly. Then immediately lost interest and started playing with the Christmas presents under the tree. Mark's mom held Noah for a long time, not saying much, just looking at him with tears streaming down her face. She'd been a single mother, raising Mark on her own after his dad left. She knew what it meant to fight for your family, to never give up hope, even when things seemed impossible. "You're going to be a wonderful father," she finally said to Mark. "I'm so proud of you. I'm so happy for you." Mark hugged her, careful not to jostle Noah. "Thanks, Mom, for everything, for showing me what it means to be a parent, for never giving up on me." By the time everyone left around 4:30, Mark and I were completely drained. We'd been up for nearly 24 hours straight. We'd met our son, brought him home, introduced him to his family, and survived our first day of parenthood. We collapsed on the couch together, Noah sleeping in Mark's arms. "We did it," Mark said. "We made it through day 1. Day 1, I repeated. There are going to be so many more days, so many more firsts. First smile, first laugh, first steps, first words. First time he tells us he hates us because we won't let him do something he wants to do, Mark added with a tired smile. I laughed. That too, all of it. Every moment, every challenge, every joy. We get all of it, now. My phone buzzed. Another message from Jennifer. Amanda signed the preliminary paperwork this morning. She's doing okay. She wants you to know she's at peace with her decision. The 48-hour clock officially starts now. Sunday night at 8 p.m., if she hasn't changed her mind, the adoption moves forward to the finalization stage. Sunday night. Just over 48 hours away. 2 more days of uncertainty. 2 more days of knowing that everything could still fall apart. I showed the message to Mark, and I saw the fear flicker across his face before he pushed it away. She's not going to change her mind, he said, but I heard the doubt underneath his words. She chose us, she gave him to us, she's at peace with it. I know, I said. But I didn't know. Not really. None of us could know what the next 48 hours would bring. That night, we took turns sleeping in 2-hour shifts. One of us would stay in the nursery with Noah, while the other tried to rest in our bedroom. But even when it was my turn to sleep, I couldn't. I kept getting up, creeping into the nursery to check on him, to make sure he was still breathing, still there, still real. Around 3 a.m, during one of his feedings, Noah looked up at me with his dark blue eyes. Really looked at me, like he was trying to figure out who I was, who this person was that kept holding him and feeding him and talking to him in soft voices. Hi, baby, I whispered. I'm your mama, and I love you so much already. I know you don't understand that yet, but you will. Someday you'll understand how much you're loved. By me and Daddy. By your grandparents and aunts and uncles and cousins. By Amanda, who wanted you to have the best life possible. You're so loved, Noah. So incredibly loved. He made a small sound, and I took it as agreement. Or maybe it was just gas. But in that moment, in the quiet darkness of the nursery at 3 a.m., on what was now technically December 26th, I felt something settle in my chest, a certainty I hadn't allowed myself to feel before. This was my son. No matter what happened in the next 48 hours, no matter what challenges we faced in the future, right now, in this moment, he was mine, and I was his. And that was enough. The next day passed in a blur of diaper changes and feedings, and more visitors. Friends we hadn't seen in months showed up with gifts and congratulations. Neighbors we barely knew stopped by with casseroles and well wishes. Everyone wanted to meet Noah. Everyone wanted to share in our joy. And through it all, I kept checking my phone, waiting for a message from Jennifer, waiting for news about Amanda, terrified that she would change her mind, that she would realize she'd made a mistake, that she would want him back. But no message came. The hours ticked by. Saturday night turned into Sunday morning. Sunday morning turned into Sunday afternoon. And still, no word. Mark was trying to act calm, but I could see the tension in his shoulders. The way he held Noah just a little bit tighter. The way his eyes kept darting to his phone. We were both holding our breath, waiting for 8 p.m., waiting for the deadline to pass, waiting to know if we could finally exhale. Around 7:30, my phone rang. Jennifer's name flashed on the screen. My heart stopped. This was it. This was the call that would either confirm our joy or shatter it completely. I looked at Mark. He nodded. I answered. Sarah, Jennifer said, and I couldn't read her tone. I wanted to call you before the deadline. I just left the hospital. I met with Amanda one more time. She wanted me to give you a message. I couldn't breathe, couldn't speak. Mark had moved closer, trying to hear, his face pale. She said to tell you that she's sure, Jennifer continued. She said she's been sure since the moment she handed him to you. She said she sees how much you love him, and she knows she made the right choice. The paperwork is complete. As of 8 p.m. tonight, Noah is legally in your custody, pending finalization. Congratulations, you're officially parents. I dropped the phone. Or maybe I threw it. I wasn't sure. All I knew was that Mark was hugging me, and I was crying. And we were both laughing and crying at the same time. It was real. It was really happening. Amanda wasn't changing her mind. Noah was ours. We're parents, Mark said, his voice full of wonder. Sarah, we're really parents. I looked over at Noah, sleeping peacefully in his bouncer, completely unaware of the significance of this moment. Unaware that his entire future had just been secured. That his family had just become permanent. We're parents, I repeated, and this time, I believed it completely. The next few weeks passed an exhausted, joyful blur. We learned Noah's cries, the hungry cry that started soft and built to a crescendo. The tired cry that was more of a whimper. The uncomfortable cry when his diaper was dirty or his clothes were too tight. We learned his rhythms, how he liked to be held, how he calmed down when we walked around the house, how he fell asleep fastest when Mark sang to him in his off-key voice. We had follow-up visits with Jennifer, meetings with lawyers, paperwork that seemed endless. A court date was set for March, when a judge would finalize the adoption and make Noah legally and permanently our son. But in our hearts, he already was. He'd been ours since the moment Amanda placed him in my arms. True to our promise, we sent Amanda photos every week. Pictures of Noah sleeping, Noah awake and alert, Noah meeting his grandparents, Noah in the little outfits they bought him. We wrote her updates, told her about his first real smile, his first time sleeping more than 3 hours straight, every milestone, no matter how small. And she wrote back, not every time, but often enough. She thanked us for the photos, said it helped her to see him happy and loved, said she was doing okay. She'd gone back to school. She was seeing a therapist. She was moving forward with her life, but she thought about Noah every day, loved him every day. On New Year's Eve, we stayed home with Noah, just the three of us. We'd been invited to parties. My parents wanted us to come over. But we declined everything. We wanted this night to ourselves, to reflect on the year we'd had, the pain and the loss and the incredible, miraculous gift that had come to us on Christmas Eve. At midnight, Mark and I stood in the nursery with Noah sleeping in his crib. We kissed each other as fireworks exploded in the distance. And then we each kissed Noah's forehead. "Happy New Year, sweet boy," I whispered. "This is your first New Year, the first of so many, and we get to be here for all of them. We get to watch you grow up. We get to be your parents. What a gift. What an incredible gift." Mark wrapped his arms around me, and we stood there together, watching our son sleep. Our family, complete at last. I thought about the phone call that had started everything, about how close we'd come to not answering, about the split-second decision that had changed our lives forever. And I thought about Amanda, about her courage, about the impossible choice she'd made out of love. I hoped she was somewhere safe tonight, somewhere warm, surrounded by people who loved her. I hoped she was finding her own peace, her own path forward. I hoped she knew that her sacrifice hadn't been in vain, that Noah would grow up knowing her story, knowing that he'd been loved from the very beginning, loved so much that his birth mother had put his needs before her own. 3 months later, we stood in a courtroom with Noah in my arms. He was bigger now, 12 pounds, learning to hold his head up, starting to smile at us with recognition, starting to laugh when Mark made funny faces, becoming more himself every day. The judge was an older woman with kind eyes. She reviewed our file, asked us questions about our home, about our support system, about our plans for Noah's future. She asked if we'd maintained contact with Amanda, and we said yes. Showed her the emails we'd exchanged, the pictures we'd sent, the relationship we were building. "It's clear to me that Noah is thriving in your care," the judge said. "And it's clear that you're honoring the wishes of his birth mother. that you understand this adoption isn't an ending, but a continuation of the love story that began when Amanda chose you. She signed the papers with a flourish. Congratulations. The adoption is finalized. Noah is now legally your son. We'd expected to feel different, to feel some fundamental shift when the papers were signed, but we didn't, because Noah had been our son all along, since Christmas Eve, since that phone call, since the moment we'd decided to hope one more time. What we felt instead was gratitude, deep, overwhelming gratitude, for Amanda's courage, for Jennifer's dedication, for the friends and family who'd supported us through 3 years of heartbreak, for the universe, or God, or whatever force had brought us together with Noah, for the chance to be parents, to love this child, to watch him grow. Outside the courthouse, we took photos. Noah in his little suit, me crying happy tears, Mark grinning like he'd just won the lottery. Our families surrounding us, everyone celebrating this moment we'd worked so hard to reach. That night, we added the finalization certificate to the memory book we were keeping for Noah. Photos from the hospital, the letter from Amanda, pictures from his first weeks at home. Every milestone documented, every moment preserved, so that someday, when he was old enough, we could show him his story, could tell him about the Christmas Eve when he came into our lives, could help him understand that he was born from love and chosen with love and surrounded by love every single day of his life. As I tucked Noah into his crib that night, I thought about all the ways our lives had changed in just 3 months. How we'd gone from a couple drinking wine on Christmas Eve, having given up hope, to parents of a beautiful baby boy. How quickly everything had shifted. How one phone call had altered the trajectory of our entire future. Sweet dreams, Noah, I whispered, pulling his blanket up to his chest. Mama loves you. Daddy loves you. Amanda loves you. You are so, so loved. He made a small sound in his sleep and turned his head to the side. Content. Safe. Home. I stood by the crib for a moment longer, just watching him breathe. This baby who had made us a family, who had healed our broken hearts, who had taught us that sometimes miracles do happen. Sometimes the story does have a happy ending. Sometimes hope is rewarded, even when you've stopped believing in it. It was 8 p.m., exactly 3 months since the phone call, since the moment our lives changed forever. I thought about that version of myself, the woman who'd been so tired, so defeated, so ready to give up. If I could go back and tell her what was about to happen, she wouldn't believe me. The pain had been too deep, the disappointments too many. But she'd answered the phone anyway, despite everything, despite all the reasons to let it ring. She'd answered, and that had made all the difference. I turned off the nursery light and walked downstairs where Mark was waiting on the couch. He pulled me close, and we sat there together in the quiet house. Our son sleeping upstairs, our family complete, our hearts full. Thank you, I said to Mark. For what? For not getting up. For being willing to try one more time. For being the kind of father Noah deserves. Mark kissed my forehead. Thank you for answering the phone. I smiled. Always, I said. I'll always answer the phone for our family. And I meant it. Whatever challenges came next, whatever difficulties we faced, whatever the future held, we would face it together, the 3 of us. A family built not by blood, but by love, by choice, by the courage of a 19-year-old girl who'd wanted better for her son, by our willingness to keep hoping, even when hope seemed foolish. This was our story, Noah's story, a story that began on Christmas Eve with a phone call we almost didn't answer, a story that would continue for the rest of our lives, a story of love and loss and second chances and miracles. And it was only just beginning.